is just fantastic.
Hello everyone, welcome to the Halls of Injustice. Today we welcome inmates number 192 to the ISO cubes. Inmates number 192's full name and title would be Corporal Sam Evans. The corporal part though is, for the sake of it, going to be completely discarded in favour of just Sam Evans or inmates number 192. I'm going to insert two disclaimers. The first is a trigger warning for those who might be a bit sensitive to very heinous crimes, and the crime committed by Sam Evans is heinous. The second, he was actually sentenced in April of last year, which does raise the obvious question of how did you miss this by, well, close to a year at this point? The answer is quite simple really. I had actually forgotten about it. I have an entire tab of crimes and people I'm keeping an eye on, and I forgot to keep up to date with Sam Evans. My apologies for that. As is the nature of crimes though, we are quite fortuitous in that we are able to cover crimes later on, regardless of what they have done and regardless of the relevancy of it. I firmly believe Sam Evans needs to be blasted across all social media for what they are. We'll start by telling you a little bit about him. As far as news coverage goes, not too much was actually made public beyond what he did, as in career-wise, and what he did as a crime. When you know what he did as a career, the nature of his crimes can come across or be interpreted as much worse, because he is a specialist to an extent. And yes, I'm very much aware he looks like Rooster from Top Gun Maverick. I'm going to refrain from insulting Miles Teller. Sam Evans was a corporal in the 29th Commando Royal Artillery Regiment, which is a British Army unit based in Plymouth, so already we're off to a flying start. On the 2nd of July 2022, Sam Evans committed his crime against Jane Doe. Jane Doe he had met via a dating app, and they had been messaging after exchanging phone numbers, texting for quite some time. Jane Doe had gone to Annabelle's nightclub when Sam Evans turned up with friends. He knew that she had frequented the venue and CCTV footage showed him following her around the club, watching her from a distance. When Jane Doe became separated from her friends, she was approached outside by Sam Evans, who had called a taxi. He wanted to go home. She insisted on going to a North Hill bar to meet her friends. At some point during that evening, her phone went missing. The phone did later on turn up near his home in Devonport, Plymouth, where they had also gone. She lived 4 miles away. When they took the taxi to go home, he had gotten out of the taxi at a garage, a short walk from his flat. The reason why was so both could use the cash point. Sam Evans, though, paid the driver and told him to leave. This is when Jane Doe had realised her phone had gone missing. There was CCTV footage that has done its rounds showing Jane Doe, very unsteady on her feet, being led by Sam Evans to his home. He did live at that point with someone. Jane Doe had, for a time, refused to actually meet up with him in person, preferring the online and messaging aspect of this building fledgling attempt of a relationship. Once they arrived at his home, he declared his love for her. She asked him to call her a taxi again. Instead though, he decided to take her to his bedroom, lock the door, strike her, and then pin her to the bed by her throat. He then ordered her to remove her clothing. He then knelt on her chest, which restricted her breathing, held her by her throat until she passed out. He then proceeded to take full advantage of her while she was prone and vulnerable, not just using his hands but other items on his body and a vibration device that he possessed. Once he was done committing this crime, Jane Doe asked for him to call her a taxi so she could go home. He declined and drove her home. At this point, she felt she had no choice but to accept this. On their way back, he told her he never wanted anyone to know what he had done. He also said he felt bad for her and asked whether she was going to say anything, as he would be in trouble. In this instance, he was prioritizing in his head how he would suffer in the military for this, how it would harm his career. The reason he dropped her off home himself was so that he could know where she lived, meaning he would then have control over her, meaning she would be unlikely to go to the police. She'd be unlikely to seek help. He had control. Her mother noticed the facial injuries when she was dropped off home, but Jane Doe did not want to call the police out of fear that her attacker knew where she lived. On the same day, she went to the hospital because she was in extreme pain. While being examined and treated, she told the staff about the ordeal, who then called the police. She was treated for multiple injuries, including a concussion, a jaw injury, significant bruising to her chest, bruised arms and neck, and cuts and bruises to her mouth. 5 days later, while driving his van, Sam Evans was arrested under suspicion of RAPE. When he was interviewed by the police, he said that the pair had had sex but denied the charge, along with assault, or that his victim had said she wanted to go home beforehand. He admitted lightly choking her and did concede that he could have caused the throat injuries but had not meant to hurt her. He further admitted he is heavy-handed and could have made her lose consciousness for a period of time. In case it wasn't obvious enough, yes, he is attempting to downplay the severity of what he had done. What he had done came with 7 charges. 2 counts of RAPE, 3 counts of assault by penetration, 1 count of assault occasioning actual bodily harm, and 1 count of intentional strangulation. All charges in the United Kingdom carry significant prison terms. Someone may now speculate that perhaps his military connections might offer a form of protection for him. In the UK, that is not afforded, unless you're some kind of brigadier general, and even then, you're kinda flayed. When this went to trial, Sam Evans denied all 7 charges, so that is where we're now going to go. The jury were warned by prosecutor Daniel Pawson Pounds at the beginning of the trial the details of the case would be unpleasant, before they were then made to watch a video recording of the young woman, Jane Doe, being interviewed by specially trained detectives before she then gave her evidence in court. While giving evidence, Jane Doe also pointed to the fact that he had spat on her multiple times in her face, more notably her eyes, and at one point urinated on her. The trial itself lasted for a week. The jury consisted of 5 women, 7 men. When giving evidence, Sam Evans had indicated that actually she had requested he urinate and spit on her. He also told the jury that she had seen his uniform hanging on his bedroom door, and on learning he was a corporal, had said to him, "I like a strong, dominant man." When Jane Doe presented her evidence, she indicated that on multiple occasions during this 4.5-hour ordeal, that she tried to fight him off and asked him to stop, to which he replied, "I like it when you keep telling me to stop, I like it when you say no." And that when he had choked her, she feared that Sam Evans was going to take it too far. "I honestly thought that even if he was not intentionally going to, he is accidentally going to unalive me in a minute." In an attempt to try and deflect from the accusations, those that sought to defend Sam Evans did so because they had worked with him in the military. For example, his defense barrister Michael Green questioned Katie Draylor. She had known him for 6 years, worked with him for 3 on a daily basis in the same workshop, and had been deployed together with the Royal Electrical and Mechanical Engineers, along with going on many social outings together, and that he was a virtuous man that never told a lie. A second character witness statement was read to the court from Lieutenant Cameron Trass, describing Evans as a close friend of whom he had the utmost respect, adding that he was respected by his peers up and down the chain of command, along with being recognised for integrity and honesty as well as emotional intelligence. One prevailing theme though throughout the entire week was that at no point could Sam Evans provide so much as one reason why these allegations would be made up by Jane Doe. They were oddly specific, and the CCTV footage showing them together does not help him. One additional detail that needs to be added is that this victim, Jane Doe, suffers from a medical condition that makes sex very painful for her. I'm going to take a wild guess because it's not actually referenced explicitly as dyspareunia, although I could be wrong, and of course I'm not trying to shame anyone, it is quite a common problem. So the prosecution referenced this fact and point out, why would she ask for something knowing it's going to hurt her? The jury retired and took 12 hours and 51 minutes to reach their verdicts. It was 9 hours and 17 minutes into these deliberations, Judge Robert Linford had actually directed the jury he would accept majority verdicts, because they were struggling here. On one of the charges of RAPE, the jury returned a verdict of 10-2 majority guilty, also finding him guilty of assault by penetration using his hand on a majority of 10-2 as well. He was found unanimously guilty of assault by penetration using a vibrator, assault occasioning actual bodily harm, slapping her around the face and head, and intentional strangulation. He was found not guilty of oral RAPE and not guilty of a second count of assault by penetration using his hand. Upon this verdict being read, Judge Linford wanted a probation report to ascertain whether Sam Evans was dangerous. The sentencing took place on April the 3rd, and he was warned he was facing the inevitable, substantial custodial sentence, and he was remanded into custody while he awaited that. British Army Corporal Sam Evans, ex, inmate number 192, found guilty of multiple charges of sexual assault, was sentenced to 14 years in prison, along with being given an additional 4 years on license after he was considered a danger by a judge. He was also put onto the sex offenders register for the rest of his life. The reason why is because what they had proven in the trial was that he had been eyeballing this girl for some time. He had planned the entire evening to grab her at the right moment, so he could do what he wanted to her. As he was led away, Jane Doe had said, "Sexual assault is more than just a physical assault. My body is the shell in which I hold everything that I am. A violation to someone's body is a violation to the very core of a person. It is hard to put into words the irreparable damage Sam Evans has caused me. I would encourage any victim of RAPE and sexual assault to come forward so that together we can put an end to this violence. You are not alone, there is support waiting for you. I will not let what happened defeat me. This will be the making, not breaking, of me." The investigating officer, Detective Constable Lee Tucker, had said, "I believe this is one of the worst cases of its kind that Devon and Cornwall police has dealt with. The victim was subjected to a brutal and horrific ordeal at the hands of Sam Evans. The level of premeditation he showed leading up to the incident, what he did on the night, and how he manipulated someone very vulnerable into gaining his trust, demonstrates he is very dangerous. It seems clear he was leading a double life. The impeccable serviceman who is well liked and well respected, and then the other side to him, where he's using the dating app to prey on this vulnerable woman. Throughout this trial, he showed no remorse and tried to manipulate the whole court as to his version of events, which were proven to be lies." The MOD did confirm, upon his conviction, that he is no longer serving in the army, which was fairly obvious anyway, but sometimes does need to be pointed out. Sam Evans deserves a lengthy term in prison, and all the protections for Jane Doe should be in place. For example, he is banned from contacting her for 25 years. In 18 years, he might be lucky enough to live a life, although it is highly unlikely, and he should get used to the idea of living on the dole.